Welcome to Oops, I Talk Politics, the left-wing political podcast where we talk about politics and sometimes pop culture from a political lens. I'm Ryan.
I'm Sly.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Darryl.
And this is not a regular episode.
Yeah, we're actually going to be talking about pop culture from a political lens this time.
Wasn't that our original goal?
Yeah, and then the inauguration happened and we haven't had a break. I requested to not do a regular episode because everything's really terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you see, it turns out happens when everyone ignores me and says, no, let's go full politics, Sly, and go full serious. It turns out you eventually get burned out.
Yeah.
So maybe we need a fucking goofy episode every once in a while just to fucking let off some steam, guys.
Yeah, as you could tell, Sly's always the fun, goofy one.
Yeah, we need a fucking goofy episode, you fucking pieces of shit.
So,
yeah,
Sly had us watch this movie, which if you see the title of this episode and it's just Bulworth, and you're like, I don't know what this movie is, like, we didn't know what this movie was either. And Sly said, don't look anything up, just go into it, just watch it, and enjoy the ride.
yes.
Yeah, I finished it like literally 5 minutes ago.
So, Phil, tell us what you would say the premise of this movie is.
A senator from California tries to have himself assassinated and then doesn't want to and just starts saying how politics is bullshit to the world.
Rapping about how politics
Oh yeah,
is
he
bullshit.
does rap about how politics is bullshit.
All right, so
Yeah,
basically, it's about a senator named Jay Bulworth who basically becomes super, like, he's like, now he's like full neo-lib piece of shit. Like, opening videos, him crying as he's watching him on TV, his political ads, and he's like the ultimate neoliberal piece of shit, saying we need to get rid of affirmative action, we gotta cut welfare, we gotta make sure people who are not working don't get benefits.
This stuff, like, was this neoliberal or was he just spewing conservative talking points?
This came out in 1998. This was right after Clinton cut welfare, right after he cut capital gains tax, while he was talking about cutting Social Security, Medicare. This was like the peak, and there was no progressive move whatsoever at this point. This was like peak Democrats were neoliberal Clintonites 100%.
Well, at one point, someone in the movie describes him as a senator going from liberal roots into full-on neoconservative.
Mm-hmm.
So,
they say he's a liberal wine being poured into a conservative bottle.
yes.
Yeah. So he's like completely like disillusioned, and opening is him crying as he's watching his own
And he
campaign
just
ads.
looks like a regular, like, late 40s, early 50s white guy senator.
Yeah, Warren Beatty plays the lead. I think it's an amazing performance. He
also
writes,
directed and produced and wrote the screenplay, yeah.
So like this was his Orson Welles moment. I think he outclasses Orson Welles by a significant degree. But yeah, so he looks like he's perfect for the role because he looks just like a generic white senator.
Yeah.
And as the story progresses, the story is really about him going through a mental breakdown.
Like, really, like, the movie's kind of uncomfortable to watch at points because it's just like him being so insane and everyone being like, what are you doing? And he just doesn't answer them and just starts calling people the N-word and like,
Yeah.
like, it's...
He calls one person the N-word because he says that he calls him the N-word first, kind of a thing.
Yeah, black guy calls me the N-word and he calls me N-word back.
Yeah.
Both sides.
First basis on both sides. But so the general premise as it's pitched in the trailers and stuff like that is this guy, as he's going through his mental breakdown, he starts basically speaking truth to power instead of not giving a fuck whatever else is thinking. He goes to a boardroom and he tells them like, "Oh, my campaign staff always gives you the best Jews," and everyone's like, "How dare you?" Which is funny because Trump almost said like the same thing like recently, and there's lots of echoes to this and Trump in my eyes. The wish fulfillment. Say what you feel kind of attitude.
Yeah, they repeatedly say like he's not, like he's fed up with baloney or something, or he's not going to speak any more baloney, and like a lot of people respect him for doing that, which was like, to me, when you were saying like let's do something like fun and lighthearted that we can point at, when I was watching this I was just getting those like flashbacks of how much that people actually do want a politician that cuts through the bull crap, but like that wasn't comforting because it gave us Trump.
Yeah.
But when I was pitching this film, I'm not watching myself. I just knew about it. I knew it was a forgotten film. I only knew from the trailers.
Sly, I believe I asked you, how did I not know about this movie? And you said that the soundtrack went platinum or something?
Yeah. I actually, the reason why I ever even had a vacant of the song, and maybe why some people might, the song Ghetto Superstar from the 90s was a tie into this song. But people remember the platinum soundtrack. They remember that one top 10 single. But no one fucking remembers this movie. It kind of bombed at the box office.
There was a 10-minute block where they just kept playing "Insane in the Membrane" over and over again.
Yeah, so long.
And that was like just a weird thing about the scores. When he has the change to where he starts rapping and stuff, it just plays a lot of hip hop music, but it's like it plays very obvious. Like the lyrics are like what's going on at the time.
Well, that's what a soundtrack should do. Like, it should reflect the plot.
Like the scene where he's dancing in the club and the soundtrack keeps saying he's got a big dick. He's got a big dick.
Yeah, excuse me, Sly. Did you just say that scores should be like obvious of what's going on at the time?
No, they should reflect the events going on. Yes, like that's
even
why don't you have a lyrical soundtrack if not that?
Because you want to try and be a little more subtle. I thought you were the person that was like, I like it when messages.
Okay, you're saying I'm the person that I told you many times. I'm the person that's ambitious. I'm not subtle. I'm not anything. I'm about ambition, Darryl. Get it through your fucking head.
Nothing's more ambitious than got a big dick. Got a big dick.
Or like just saying what you're doing.
Let's say what you're doing, but like it's you like it's just like very we'll beat you over the head with it, but like that's a kind of like what reflects hip hop's nature, beats you over the head of these themes. Like, and that's the kind of nature of Bulworth himself. He's very upfront and abrasive, reflecting that nature. I think it's perfect for that tone and setting. For
okay,
like,
so it goes along with the theming of the movie itself.
Yeah, like
okay, that's different than
I would agree with that for sure because like he really like there are many characters throughout this film that explicitly are like, this is what I believe politically.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's another thing about it, because what really is not like. When I saw this movie, I thought it would be more of a comedy. Like, if this was made today, it would be starring Will Ferrell. It would be all these montages of him going on TV saying, yo, my N-word, what's up? Him, like, that scene, there's, like, one scene where he wears ghetto attire on TV by coincidence. He just happens to be wearing that. And he starts rapping just because he's mentally insane at that point. But, like, if this is made today, that'll be the whole film. It'll be just him, like, yo, what's up? I'm white and I'm rapping. But this whole film is really just him having a mental breakdown. And he's just talking, like, as he's just fascinated by this urban culture, and as he gets more fascinated to it, he basically just starts reciting what people tell him.
Like, like, he does literally take, when people give him social commentary about, like, how it's hard for young black men to get jobs, or, like, how manufacturing left the U.S., you see him later in an interview saying word for word what they said to him.
Yeah, and and that's another reason why, like, it kind of reflects Trump, because Bulworth himself is just a vessel. He's just like empty suit, a vessel for, like, he's echoing what people are saying. He's basically like Trump is a crowd surfer. Bulworth is just repeating what people told him, and he actually like the people that are working with him, Don Cheadle and Halle Berry, they acknowledge, like, Don Cheadle says, we're gonna use this crazy motherfucker for what he's worth. Like, we're gonna ride this guy. Like, he's just crazy, but since he's crazy, he's easy to get this message out across. Like, he has no message of his own. Like, he's just relaying what people tell him now.
Now, one thing I do want to point out is we mentioned, like, I don't think we've painted a good picture of what his personal politics are like, because he's similar to Trump in that he's just like, the system's broken, here's all the problems with it. But most of the actual policies that he's advocating for in his speech is, like, he talks about how, like, the pharmaceutical company is out to destroy everybody. The only way to get past it is a single payer system, or like through socialist populism.
Yeah, he makes socialist raps. Like, he raps about socialism.
So it's similar in tone to Trump, and like it has those same parallels where Trump was like, we gotta, we can't keep all these corrupt politicians that drain the swamp and everything. But if he like actually backed it up with liberal policies and not scapegoating like, minorities, like it's really interesting.
Because he does, like, he actually does both sides by saying, like, Republicans and Dems are both terrible, and like in the beginning of the movie he goes to a black church and he's offered to speak there, and he's given like a pre-written speech, and he just completely ignores it, and he just ends up telling them, it's like, well, he fields questions for them, and they ask them, the black community is like, how come you haven't done enough for us? And he's like, you're not ever going to vote for Republicans. We don't have to do anything for you, because who else are you going to vote for? It's like, you have to vote for us.
They ask, everyone in politics came and gave these big events after this like crisis that I don't even think they specify what it is. And you said you would increase funding. And he's like, well, because it was in the news. And Clinton was here, Gore was here, everybody was here, but then nobody cares anymore because you guys aren't going to fund our campaigns. Like pharmaceutical companies are, insurance companies are, but you're not. And what are you going to do? And he actually asked them, what are you going to do? Vote for a Republican? Of course not. Yeah. That's insane.
And everyone's like freaking out. This is like the moment where he first breaks out with this attitude, and everyone freaks out. And also, just to briefly mention, when Phil mentioned the assassin part, because that's like the whole driving.
We're like skipping the part that the whole movie is every scene him running from an assassin.
But I just want to clarify the reason why I picked this movie. Part of the reason was because everyone was like saying, "I just want to die, everyone." So I was like thinking about this movie I heard about where a guy is so despondent of politics that he sets an assassination on himself. Like he's just like, "Somebody please kill me," literally. Like,
and he takes out, the insurance thing is a big part of it too, because that's one of the industries he really harps on a lot. And at the beginning of the movie, they're paying him to vote against an insurance regulation bill.
So they're not just paying him. Basically, there's an insurance regulation bill that would be good for everybody except the insurance companies. And he has a lobbyist come and he's like, I want a $10 million life insurance policy for me and for that on me that my daughter gets $10 million if I die. And he's like back and forth and he's like, listen, I'm going to vote for this bill then. And they're like, no, we'll give you the 10 million if you kill it in committee. And it's revealed like throughout we see little insights into his life that like his daughter doesn't like him. His wife doesn't like him. They're very just like his
wife's cheating on him.
Yeah. I think they're both not really together. They just do it for public appearances.
Yeah.
And so he takes out the insurance policy and then he hires a hitman that it sounds like he's hired before to kill other people. But this time he's like, kill me and, I'll give you a check. And if I'm not dead by Monday, I will, I'm going to cancel the check. So then he sends like this, like the most 90s villain looking, like, I don't know how to describe him, but he seems pretty gross.
He's like Frank Reynolds from
yeah.
I don't like all this talk because the hitman reminded me of my dad a little bit.
No, not the hitman. I think he means Frank.
The guy who hires the assassination guy who's in charge of it. Not that.
Oh, yeah. This is a weird aspect about this movie is that he hires a guy who can hire a hitman, and he knows this guy through another guy that works with his campaign.
The guy explicitly says you don't call me. It has to go through 3 or 4 degrees so that everyone stays clean.
Yeah, that's a big part of the movie is he needs to call a guy that can call the guy that hired the hitman, so that guy can call the hitman and say the job's
he halfway through starts to realize that my new lifestyle of just saying it how it is great, or I don't know.
Yeah. So I want to clarify because this movie changed my life. It's one of my favorite movies of all time now. There's a great character. Some people might call him like the magical black guy.
He is. He totally is.
Yes. He is, but I think it's okay. It's forgivable. Like usually, magical black guy is a problem with movies where there's no black characters whatsoever. It's always white guys, and the only black character is just there.
Yeah, that's fair.
This is a movie about the black characters are more developed than the white characters. Really,
which is true.
Yeah, that is definitely.
But
true.
I mean, you're still like using that trope. It's still like a.
It is, but like I don't know. First of all, like I said, multiple black characters. They're more prominent than the white characters, and also it's changed my life, and and especially at a time where I was really needing a message like this. Basically, this black guy keeps coming towards. It's
a homeless black guy with this gray scraggly beard.
Yeah, and he keeps as like Bulworth is like mobbed by all these people for all the things he's saying. This guy comes up to him saying, "Bulworth, you can't be no ghost. You got to be a spirit, and you can't be a spirit if you don't got a song." And this is a message that keeps getting repeated throughout the movie, which I find very impactful. The idea that you're a dead man walking, like you're already giving up hope. So you could be a ghost or you could be a spirit and use and find another direction in your life. Use the lack of connection to the current reality to do something important with your life instead of just walking through mindlessly through it. And I think that was it's a very powerful message, especially in our current political climate where we already feel the American government is doing a fist of a North Star on us, and we don't know what to do.
One thing I do want to point out about the magical black character thing, and you were saying how all the other characters are much more fleshed out than usual, especially in a 1998 political movie. I also feel like none of the white characters are intelligent, they're
or
all
likable,
very cliched, just political people, and all nuance and insight comes from all the black characters.
Yes.
So I want to just quickly go through a couple of the characters. So we have the senator, like we said, Senator Jay Bulworth. And then we have the hitman, who I think also founds the Monstars in Space Jam. But then and then we also have a couple of like political advisors that are just following Bulworth around, trying to like steer him back to the path.
One of them is actually just a brain dead moron. One of them actually, I don't think he's not smart. He's just like trying to play the game.
Yeah, one of them Oliver Platt plays the main political advisor, who's just like, he's like freaking out as Bulworth is saying all these things like, oh my god, my career's gonna die. I did everything for this guy and he's ruining my career. And the other guy is just like, he just walks around like kind of just going along with what everyone else is saying. Like,
and he's like the classic campaign advisor where he's like, he's ruining us. And as soon as like a poll comes out that people like this, he's like, you gotta embrace this. You can't go back to regular. And like he has no real integrity at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And we also have, at the same time that he's doing this, C-SPAN has decided to do a 24-hour live broadcast inside the campaign. So every step of the way is getting broadcast. Like, people are seeing this right away. And that's being filmed by Sean Astin, who has barely any roles at all, lines at all.
Yeah, Sean Astin has a weird career. For a guy who was in, like, big movies in the 80s and in, like, Lord of the Rings. Like, he's in this movie just saying literally nothing. Mm-hmm. And now he's, like, in Christian, like, God's Not Dead movies. Like, he has a weird career.
The only thing that Sean Astin does is he's completely silent the whole time and never responds to anyone. And then a woman asks him, well, what do you think?
A black woman asks him.
Yeah, a black woman. And he just, like, mansplains nonstop to her for, like, every shot that we see of him until the end of the movie.
Even as the senator's running through with like his, like, as Sly said, the ghetto attire, like rapping, he doesn't even look up, even though he's the cameraman.
Yeah. And then the main black characters we have Don Cheadle is like
a drug.
He's like a drug leader, but
he is a drug leader.
It's interesting because as his plot progresses, like when you watch the movie, like if this was a cliche movie, he would just be like, I'm the bad guy of the movie, and they make you think he's the bad guy of the movie, but as the plot goes along, they try to paint him as like he's the only kind of business or community leader this area has, this black urban culture has. So like it's like a more complicated portrayal than you expect as he first shows up.
Because like when we first see him, he's like, somebody owes him money, and also he has like a bunch of kids working for him, like little kids that have like guns and stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at first you're like, oh, this is like an over-the-top view of what like a gang in the inner city is like. But then we see them all get harassed by the police for like no reason at all,
for having ice cream
in 1998, by the way, when everyone believes this never happened, by the way.
Yeah, they're eating ice cream, and a cop comes and shoves an ice cream cone in a kid's face because he's not respectful enough. And like then we see later on, Don Cheadle talks about how like, what else are they gonna do? Like, no one will hire us. Our neighborhoods are not funded at all. Nobody cares about us at all.
He talks about like Don Cheadle calls himself like a business entrepreneur, which I thought was neat. And that this is like, oh, what was the line about like the kids were a.
He says the kids give him enough.
They give him limited
liability because they're kids. They can't go to jail. Like.
And then we also have the three women that become Bulworth's like entourage when he starts this new chapter of his life. Mm-hmm. And there's two women that basically just follow him around as like a hype squad and are just like, oh hell yeah.
Those were my favorite in this whole movie, because this movie starts with, again, like he starts to lose. We should clarify that he starts to lose his mind because he hasn't eaten anything in 5 days and he hasn't slept in multiple days. Yeah, so it's not like he's like going off like Looney Tunes bouncing off the walls crazy. It's that he's like really just like out of it the whole time. Like he's got like a far off distant gaze, and he's really quiet for most of the movie because the white advisor is the one just always talking for him rather than having him talk. And then he goes to the black church and says all those things. And then as he's leaving, the hype women come over and they start yelling at him. And he's like, do you want to like help out? Do you want to volunteer? And they're like, oh yeah, sure, we'll volunteer. And then these women just like leave their life and they just join up with him for the rest of this movie.
Just to go like hell yeah the whole time.
Yeah.
Well, one thing to point out, this movie takes place over like 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, like, it's not like they like abandon their lives for like months. And also he keeps like driving them around and like
they're still like they're just gone for days, just taking a ride with this dude.
No, but it's a senator. Okay, I'm gonna defend it. I think it's very realistic. It's a senator, fucking guy in a limousine asks you to come join him and work for him. I think it's pretty realistic. I don't know, like
if people would just come and hop in your car and leave their family for days.
These people, yes, like these people obviously aren't very like they're not like people with office jobs. Probably have shit jobs. They probably don't give a fuck. Like,
well, that's kind of like what they keep driving home is like they haven't. When he says like who are you going to vote for, a Republican, a lot of the stuff that we see in a lot, like when we meet a lot of these characters' families and stuff, they're like. We've known all this shit about how terrible and unfair the world is for decades, but like people pretend it's not. Like none of our senators like ever address this. And then you have this guy show up, just go on this like whole like socialist tirade about how fucked up the system is, and then he's like, do you want to drive around in my limo and we'll like yell at like a bunch of assholes and I'll keep buying you food for a weekend? That sounds awesome to me. I would do that.
And also like I just want to point out, speaking of the fact that it takes place in a few days, that's one of the reasons why I really love this film, is because, like I said, this could have just been a film loaded with montages and funny moments, but all the scenes where he speaks truth to power are incidental scenes. Like, they happen as a result of the main plot. The main plot is him going to a mental breakdown. It's the last few days of this process where he hasn't eaten, he hasn't slept, he's completely lost it, his eyes are glazed over.
He starts doing drugs.
Yeah, Warren Beatty illustrates it pretty well. Like, he's like acts demented. Like, he laughs at random scenes. He says, he repeats what people say back to him. Like, he's speaking nonsense. It just happens to be what people want to hear. It's just pure insanity what he's saying, but it just happens to be what people want to hear. No, I don't
think what he says is insanity. Mm-hmm. I think everything he says is on
like
point.
A lot of times he starts laughing at like saying, "Oh, you guys want like one time he's at a public debate and he just starts harassing the guy next to him, saying, "Hey," and he starts tickling him and stuff like that. Like, he is like demented.
Yeah, but like when he actually says things, it's not just nonsense that people happen to like. It's all like pretty poignant political statements that all resonate with the people.
Yeah, but like like he's just saying whatever, and it just happens to resonate. It's not like he's making a cognitive political message saying, "I'm going to have a new direction where I'm going to say this." It's like he has lost it, and he's just saying what he feels like, and what he's saying is the truth because he has become disillusioned with the system.
They do talk about how when he was younger, he was like part of the like civil rights movement or something.
Yeah.
Or right? They say he was
in his office. There's pictures of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X,
and he said he like worked with Huey Newton and stuff. So I think it's like this stuff is coming from the heart,
a genuine place. Yes.
Yeah.
I just mean that it's a mention that's causing him to say this and like do the other random stuff he does, like start rapping and start just literally repeating what people say back to him. Start calling people the N-word. Like, he calls the person the N-word because the person calls the N-word back. It's not like a political statement about reverse racism. At least I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it's just him being demented.
And then he goes, "Would it be better if I said motherfucker?"
Yeah.
And I was like, this is uncomfortable.
And that's one other thing. People, a reason why I wanted to pick this film was because people act like, "Oh, this is a cringy movie about a white guy rapping," when the whole point, it is a cringy, it is uncomfortable. It's kind
even
of
even one of the little drug pusher kids is like, "Is that how white people rap?"
Yeah, like everyone acknowledges the movie that rapping is terrible. Like Warren Beatty's, like he's not doing like awesome flows or sick rhymes. He's rapping like a white dude, like a generic white dude.
Well, the other main character in this movie is Halle Berry, who plays Nina. And Nina is a weird character.
Where the fuck is she in this movie?
So, for most of the movie, she's kind of just like this silent woman that is, I guess Bulworth is like obsessed with now. Like, it seems like he falls in love with her right away.
Yes, that's the point of the movie.
No, hold on. It's very clear why she's in the movie. She's there to bait Bulworth into the cypher fucking debauchery, or whatever you want to call it.
Yes, but that's weird.
No, it's not. It's a weird coincidence. What her actual character is, but it makes perfect sense. She's just Halle Berry's incredibly attractive, insanely attractive, and Bulworth. they hint that Bulworth is a womanizer. Alvin Platt's character says this wouldn't be the first time he had to clean up her affair. So he's a womanizer. He sees this incredibly hot woman in the crowd. He basically starts following her, and through her, he starts getting gross to the urban culture. She is the heart of why he starts it. You can't say she has no plot. It's like saying
you're right.
The fucking this opening scene of the droids has no plot in point in Star Wars.
It doesn't have a point.
But
that scene.
The thing that's so weird to me is like, on one hand, I feel like she is like put on this pedestal where he just chases her around, but then there is one scene where she like breaks this stoic character that she has intentionally for a plot reason that we'll get to in a little bit. And then he actually asks like, "Well, what do you feel about stuff?" And she goes on this. I really, really like this scene where she goes on this like pretty long rant about how he asks her, why doesn't the black community have leaders anymore? Well, how come there's no like Malcolm X or Martin Luther King of the 90s? And she goes on this whole thing about how when they started closing factories and taking away like middle class city jobs, like middle class urban jobs, and they closed all the factories.
Black blue collar jobs.
Yeah, and which was that's another reason why I was because it taught me a lot of things I didn't even think about or know. She talked about how the rise of civil rights leaders in the 40s and 50s was directly tied to the rise of after World War II, the increase in jobs and black, and then that's what. And I could ask you, why aren't there black leaders? It's because we had black leaders when we had a good economy and black people were able to get jobs and they were able to fund and assemble all these people together. And when these jobs started going away, like all these black leaders started disappearing, and it's a very like something I always wondered about, like what caused the 40s and 50s to be different, and a lot of things is tied to World War II and the prosperity America experienced after that point.
Yeah. And it was just really interesting, hearing her talk about how, like, when cars started being made, when, like, neoliberal and conservative policies started pushing businesses to, like, all be, like, the lowest common denominator, you know, like, globalist kind of economic policies, then all those jobs left, and most of the income started going more towards, like, you know, the white-collar, already in power kind of people. And it was a really, really interesting rant that kind of made me reassess, because I was like, I kind of felt like she was like the exotic woman that was just there as an object of lust for the whole movie. And then I was like,
because she doesn't like say that much. She's completely like stoic, and all she says to him a few times is just like, I like the way you speak, or like, that's brave, until this point.
Yeah, but I think that's a purposeful inversion, because when he talks to her, he talks down to her saying, you don't even know who Huey Newton is, or you don't know this, and she's like, no, I know all this stuff, fuck you, old white guy.
Even he says, people your age don't know this stuff, and she said, how old do you think I am? And he, like, doesn't know. And she's like, oh, what does she say? She's 26?
Yeah. 26, yeah.
She's 26, and he, like, and I think you're right that it's an inversion, because it points out that, like, he was lusting after her as this, like, urban, like, young girl that she explicitly says, like, hey, I'm a lot more than this. You just didn't give a shit until now.
Yeah.
They also shit on the media a lot, too, in this movie. Like, you know, you guys are being paid by the same people who pay me. Even Halle Berry's character says, like, the media, when they're talking about why there are no black leaders, she talks about how, like, the media pushes this instant gratification culture where people, when they're asked to then self-sacrifice, they're not willing to do it because people are immersed in this materialistic, like, consumerist bullshit culture, and how people just want for themselves. And then even when he's on, you know, that debate, he's like saying, like, yeah, you guys are going to cut this because it's going to look bad from your corporate bosses. You're going to cut the commercial now because you guys are all shills.
That's not the reason why this movie was kind of made for me. On top of the fact it's hip hop and politics mixed together, on top of the fact it has a lot of cursing. It's like, it's a movie made for Sly, but also the politics even lean more leftist rather than just pure liberal. Like, it is very much a leftist black perspective they're providing here, and a very anti-corporate perspective. It's like this movie was made for me. And I love you, Warren Beatty. You are a great writer.
No, I thought this movie was fantastic, too. But the thing that I found so interesting, too, that, like, to go back to the comparison between him and Trump, is Trump laid out, like, these things, like, in debates where I remember him saying, like, well, I bought off politicians, so I'm the one who knows the best how corrupt the system is, and, like, all these things. But Trump would lay out these problems and then say, I'm the only one who could fix it, and I could do it on the backs of minorities and immigrants, where Bulworth doesn't really say how to fix it. He says, like, the healthcare system's broken, only a single payer system would fix it, but like, that's never gonna happen. Like, he doesn't give solutions, and he doesn't seem to even care that he's still running. Like, he's just like, the system is totally broken, it's all bullshit. And he's like, the only way we could fix this is if we, like, get rid of all race. And I think he says at one point, just everyone has to keep fucking each other until all babies are mixed races.
Yeah, that's the solution to the racial problems. Everyone keeps fucking each other.
And the thing that I really like is, I feel like a movie like this, I feel like you said, it's like a true leftist film, because it doesn't just touch upon the economics, it also touches upon the racial injustice as well, like by showing like the police, and that it's not just an economic issue, it's a big, you have to overhaul all of society for it. And I really liked the way it was laid out in a way that wasn't, here's how you fix it, because then it becomes very preachy for me, like, when movies do that, where it's like, here's everything you have to do, isn't that so simple? And it's just pretty much a straightforward, like, this is how fucked up the system is.
See, I don't
figure it out.
I'm not like super into the like those like I really don't like when people just point out problems and just kind of like shrug at whatever the answer could be.
The thing is, like Ryan says, like any problems they suggest are never going to be as simple as they are in a movie. So would you rather they paint a movie picture and give anyone this projection of how it would happen, or would you rather they, because the movie never suggests Jay Bulworth has a solution. What it suggests is Jay Bulworth is bringing up all these issues, and now Don Cheadle's character is going to use Bulworth to further his agenda and the Black leftist agenda. So like it is never implied that Bulworth is going to solve the issue by himself just by ranting, and they never really show how it is, because if they did show how it is, it would just be an idealized movie portrayal of how it would happen.
Oh, and one thing I do want to point out too is I often find that movies that don't put forth a solution are really cynical, where like everything's terrible, or everyone's just as bad, both sides are just as bad, and like there's no solution, so why bother trying? But I didn't feel that way about this movie at all. I felt like it was more empowering, where it's like someone who's addressing these problems head on is speaking to communities in a way that they have never been spoken for.
I didn't feel like it was empowering.
The whole point is you have to have a song, Darryl. The whole fucking ending is you have to have a song. You can't say it's not empowering. The whole point is to empower you. You can't be a spirit. You can't be a ghost. You have to be a spirit, Darryl. And you're gonna say it's not empowering.
I mean, it's fine if the themes...
It is. Fuck you, Darryl. That's like saying like this is like one of the most powerful messages for me. And you're gonna say my feelings are wrong. Fuck you.
It's empowering to you. Doesn't mean it's empowering.
Yeah,
to
No, it's empowering message. I think it's an empowering message. The idea that if you feel like like you're a ghost, be a spirit then. Fucking take that dead feeling inside of you, turn it instantly positive, have a fucking song. I think that's fucking powerful. And you might fucking disagree, but I think you guys are wrong. Just flat out wrong.
No, I agree with you, Sly. I'm not saying that it's a theme that has to empower everybody, but like I found that it was a much...
I think you're just wrong if you say it's not an empowering movie. I think you're just flat out wrong. I'm gonna say that, and I'm gonna make an absolute statement on that. Fuck you, Darryl.
Okay.
I didn't feel that empowered, but like I'm like I understand your argument though. Like
Maybe because you have self-hope, but if you're a person without hope, if you're in the position of Jay Bulworth, if you don't see how this can empower people, the idea that if you feel like you're hopeless, the idea that you just keep going with something you believe in, you refuse to just fucking go off like into the sun so loud and you fucking mess whatsoever. Maybe you have too much to live for, Darryl. Maybe not Phil, but like I think this is for people like me. I think this is a message that really important, better than most messages of bullshit empowerment that I usually get. Like most like the liberal ones like, oh, we're gonna be hopeful and peaceful. Audacity of hope. I'm like, fuck you. Like everything's shit. This movie acknowledges everything is shit. Acknowledges that things are gonna be shit, but you have to fucking try something. You have to have a spirit. You have to have a song. I think that's more power to me than any fucking hack speech you can provide for me from any fucking traditional source.
I do agree with you, Sly. With no caveat. But
great.
One thing I just want to point out when it's Sly's talking about like, you know, like the modern empowering hack or whatever. In 2013, the New York Times did quote Obama that apparently in private, Obama frequently talked longingly of going Bulworth towards the end of his campaign.
So like if Darryl thinks the movie was shit and stupid, Obama loves this, so fuck you, Darryl. Obama's on my side. Obama's the best president ever. He fucking knows what's good movie.
Oh, look at a neoliberal Sly over here defending Obama.
Yeah, but like Daryl's like, oh, this is so stupid. Oh, Sly recommends bad movies. Fuck you, Daryl. Obama sides with me. The fucking Oscar side with me. Fucking Cornel West left the side with me. Fuck you, you're wrong.
Not
fuck
the
you,
box
fuck
office,
you.
Though.
Oh, the American people are smarter than
it was a limited release, and according to the LA Times, it did extremely well for the amount of release it had. For what it's worth.
Alright, so Daryl was wrong. Let's move on.
Okay, whatever.
Alright, so now with that said, let's move on to we're gonna get to spoilers and talk about the ending.
Yeah, now, I personally think that people should watch this movie. Some of the twists actually caught me off guard, and I think you can rent it on Amazon for like $2 or $3. So I recommend watching it, but we are going to talk about the end of the movie and the plot stuff that happens. So spoiler warning.
Alright, so for our edits, just put like a little sound cue, like and then we get to spoiler section. So now we're going to get to the ending, which apparently you guys thought was not ambiguous at all. The idea that what happens is the health insurance guys that Bulworth was trying to scam, and that the corrupt ones that were paying him.
There's a bunch of drama before this where he's like trying to cancel the hit on himself, and the guy who's supposed to cancel the hit has a heart attack, so the hit is still on, and he's running for his life. And then in the end, he's like, "Oh, I'm safe."
And it's the plot point that I was talking about before. The reason why Nina was being so stoic and everything is because she is the hitman in secret, and the guy he thought was the hitman is just paparazzi trying to get an incriminating photo of him with a mistress.
Yes.
So she's like the femme fatale. Like,
yeah, so that's why she was like pretending to be like quiet and dumb the whole time. Yeah.
Yes.
So then it gets to the climax.
Yeah, and so Bulworth gets shot by an insurance guy, surprisingly enough. As it looks like now, apparently he won the primary, and it looked like he was going... Like, he even got a few votes for the presidency.
He had 15% of Democrats and 8% of Republicans voted for him for president, even though he wasn't running. So people were like, oh shit, like, this guy's pretty popular.
Yeah, so like, so now like everyone's... It seems like the moment it's all coming together, everyone's rooting for him. He finally... got some rest, and now he's rested, and now he's like he has a final movie kiss with Nina, and then he gets shot by the insurance guy, and ends with the scene outside the hospital, and the black magical guy, black magical hobo. He starts talking to the audience, say, you guys have to be a spirit. You can't be a ghost. You got to be a spirit. And it hit me so hard, and then the movie ends, and I felt like I can see why people because there's a common complaint that this movie makes it feel like it is too much that Bulworth definitely died, but I think that makes it more powerful because by the evidence presented, if you are cynical, it looks like Bulworth definitely died. If you are a realist pragmatist, but the evidence overwhelmingly stacked in favor of him dying. But if you have enough optimism, in I think you can see it as more ambiguous than it is. And
I don't think he necessarily died. I thought it was ambiguous because it's not outside the morgue. It's outside the hospital.
Yeah.
And he got shot once. He got shot once.
I did not understand what you meant when we started arguing before we recorded about if it was ambiguous. I thought you meant it was ambiguous who shot him.
No, it's not ambiguous.
It was the hobo, right?
It is very clear that it is the insurance guy.
I thought it was the hobo who shot him. That's why he's like, you gotta be a ghost because I killed you.
All right, I got to clarify because there are people in reviews that say it's too obvious that he's at the end. It's a bad movie, even I'm like, fuck you. It's the whole point.
Oh no, I think that's. I'm glad that it ends ambiguously, like you said, about was he defeated by the machine, the political machine, especially because the deep state is actually who put out the hit on him, which was himself.
Yeah.
Or was it, will he live on and actually like overhaul the liberal, the Democratic Party? And like, especially because this wasn't a period piece. Like, it didn't come out like now talking about like in the 90s. Yeah. It was at the time when like maybe we thought something might be better. And like, it's interesting. I always really, really like reading or seeing political stories set in the late 90s because I feel like there was this certain direction that we were going in that 9/11 kind of completely shifted.
Because we were talking about both sides is just the same kind of stuff. This was the last era where the criticism of Democrats and like the stuff about like Rage Against the Machine, like it was a very popular meme. Both sides much as bad, whatever. That was when it was at its peak. Like I said, this was back when the Democrats were full cutting welfare and all that stuff. And last Republican president was George H.W. Bush, who actually raised taxes, who was actually kind of decent compared to a lot of other presidents. So like this was like the last era where we really had a distinction. We really had no distinction between the parties as much as we have now. And like 9/11 was like the end, like basically got worse before it could come close to getting better. We had to go through Bush to even get a progressive wing back into the Democratic Party.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I find really interesting because like when I read any political commentary or satires or anything from the late 90s, it's such a short-lived period of analysis where it's pre 9/11 where we could still like it was still mainstream to like take a harder look at America itself without having that nationalist streak that happened post all the wars and stuff we got through and are still in. And like it was just I wish that there was more media, like I wish there was more political things from the late 90s that I knew about.
That's the reason why I will defend this movie so much, because it's very easy to have like a retrospective on eras like this.
Yes.
Where the feelings, this captures the feeling at the time, and that for me makes it more priceless, because it's very easy to make a movie about Martin Luther King now and try to paint this flowery picture of Martin Luther King back in the era, ignoring when in reality when he was popular, Martin Luther King was a controversial figure. I forget what the polls were, but I think like half the country didn't thought he was too radical or whatever. And like now we flower it up and focus on the stuff because now we know what he accomplished after the fact, but we didn't know where he was going or what it was linked to. But this movie and like movies that are made in a time of these actual specific eras in politics, they actually capture the mood of the mood, and the mood often just evaporates over time. Like we talk about Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid 2, and how a lot of junk data gets discarded away. That is true, but this made me think that a lot of like important indicators of the general country's mood disappear over time too. Like I was thinking in 2008, like there's no way you will ever find these anywhere. But I remember distinctly watching TV ads, watching radio ads where everyone was talking about the Wall Street bailout. They're like TV ads saying, "Oh, where's your bailout? Go to our Hyundai deal or whatever." And it's a silly, stupid thing that you might say, "Oh, that should be discarded." But like these all paint a picture of an actual era and the moods at the time, and then those indicators go away, and all we have are the flowery images we have in retrospect. And
I think that especially like with the MLK thing you were talking about, it's done. That same scene where you're talking about like the closing of the factories or whatever, when he asks like how come there's no black leaders, Nina also says, well, it's because they all got killed. Like that has something to do with it, that they all got killed. And this is before, like, the reason why 9/11 is such a stark shift in tone for me is because I feel like protesting, it became such a clear, almost always anti-war protest for a really long time.
Yes.
Whereas at this point, we weren't protesting wars. We'd have to protest just the system in general. And that's a much harder thing to rally people around. Yes. And she talks about that, but like she doesn't mention the war stuff because like they didn't know that we were about to enter into multiple decade-long wars. But it's like that's such a fascinating point, is like the civil rights leaders we had were killed, and then your pro-corporate policies took away any agency new ones had to be formed. So what else are we supposed to do? And it wasn't until we had this like huge, very clear in-your-face military industrial complex to protest up against that we were just kind of spinning our wheels.
And the massive economic crash that...
Yes, absolutely, that too.
That's what I'm talking about with the fucking ads and stuff. Like, people forget how much people were pissed off at the bailouts, how much they were pissed off at Wall Street, pissed off at the rich. Like, even the Occupy Wall Street movement is fading into memory. Like, all these things, like, people forget when Obama came into office, the movement that pushed him into office, this black guy, into a position of ultimate power in America. It's easy now, people paint it out, oh, America got over its racism and we learned to stop being racist. But in reality, it was all these factors coming into play that made people really sick of the establishment as it was, and it created this momentum for Barack Obama to come to office.
Yeah.
And he loved this movie, so we have to respect him.
Yes.
Do you think, so one thing I do just want to talk about is, I know, like, Phil, you mentioned you were kind of uncomfortable with certain scenes. I was uncomfortable with a lot of the Nina plot until like 3/4 of the way in the movie. And Darryl, you said it didn't really empower you. Were there any specific critiques or flaws of the film that you think should have been done better?
Well, I agree with you on some things, like the message of like that Nina gave. Like the speech itself felt very like, I don't know if you guys have watched The Newsroom. Like I like that show a lot, but
yes, Alan Sorkin actually wrote parts of the script. By the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right,
and that feels like a very Alan Sorkin script, but I forgive it because the rest of the dialogue is so natural. Like it's a one piece of Alan Sorkin dialogue versus like a whole TV show of Alan Sorkin dialogue. I think it's a forgivable piece, especially since the whole point is supposed to teach you that she is smart, like even like abnormally smart. But like after all the subversion they did of her being a lustful, exotic woman, I think it was necessary to go that far.
I think it's. I agree with you conceptually, Sly, but there were quite a few scenes that I was like, this is a shoehorned lecture. Like, this is really just laying.
Any other rapping, her and Don Cheadle.
Brian, you were the one saying at some point to be optimistic, you have to be, you can't be subtle. So
yeah,
I actually would argue that it feels weirder than having a just whole TV show of Aaron Sorkin dialogue. Because when I'm watching The Newsroom, I'm like, this is just the world I'm in right now. Mm-hmm. But when you have a movie where that's not generally the world, but then people just bust out into these like economics lectures, it seems very jarring.
Very quick-paced economics lectures too.
Yeah. That's the thing, is it wasn't because of my taste, it wasn't a deal breaker for me at all. I still really, really liked this movie. But like those parts did stand out where like I liked them, but I recognized that it does hurt the script a little.
I disagree. I think they needed those scenes to be as punching as possible to move the plot along. That's one thing I love about the script. It is very, very tightly focused, and if you meander too much on those points, it would have dragged the script. I think the fact they made it punchy, and it may have been luxury, but they weren't that long for scenes. First of all,
that's true. They were usually pretty quick,
and they're all reactions to Bulworth's questioning. They weren't like out of nowhere. A character sits up saying, "I have a speech to make, and I'm going to say it." Like it was Bulworth talking to his character, and the character responds, trying to explain himself. I'm going to say I think every part of the movie is perfect. So I'm going to fight. If I fucking say one fucking word against the movie, I'm going to talk back to you. But go ahead.
That's fair. I think that is a fair response.
I'm not sure it is, but okay.
Darryl, do you have anything egregious that stood out to you? No. Okay, so then
he doesn't want to go to the gulag.
Yep, I'm out.
Okay, well, Bulworth, everyone, I think people should watch it. Would you recommend this film, Darryl?
I'm gonna plead the fifth.
Okay,
you can say no.
I don't know if I would. I thought it was actually interesting. I'm not sure I would go to people saying, "You gotta see this movie." It was interesting, for sure.
I would recommend it. I liked it a lot. Obviously, Sly would.
It's hard to recommend. It's a movie that's hard to recommend because you have to be. First of all, you have to be kind of the kind of person that appeal to what Bulworth is saying. You can't be like a conservative, probably. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you could be a conservative, but I don't think you. Maybe not. Especially because there's always black characters in the cast. They'll be bullshit. But I think you should see it, and it is a movie that's very unique. And this is the kind of movie that filmmaking was made for. The kind of movie that art was made for. To really create a unique product.
Very dramatic.
Like no, but seriously, like this is what humanity is made for. Like, I'm not fucking kidding. You know, I'm fucking joking. But there's so fucking many films that try to preach this stuff. This movie preaches, but in such a generic way, to such generic formats, to such generic characters. Like this is why I've really turned around on comedies. Like the absurdity of life mixed with like real issues. That hits a chord of me that like the most melodramatic Oscar bait movie really can't. Like this touches on the absurdity of life and the grim reality of issues, and that makes it more potent and realistic to me than a lot of films that people will say are dramatic, beautiful motion pictures.
So much of the movie is just running from a hitman, though.
Well, it's a movie. It has to have momentum for the plot, and I think the movie keeps a very strong momentum going throughout. I'm sorry, I'm gonna keep defending it because I love it. It's fucking like if you try to argue Last Jedi of Ryan, he's gonna fucking defend it.
I thought when you said before it's hard to recommend this movie because you're gonna say like it's life now. Like this is like defending the Bible. Like if you're a Christian.
I did feel like while I was watching it, I was like, I like this so much, and I did feel that the Hitman stuff got in the way. I understand thematically why it matters, why it gives stakes. Like, I get the narrative reasons why it's there, but I would have liked more politics and lefts running around.
It's the more traditional part of the story.
Yeah.
But as always, another reason why I think it's perfect, I also think a film can't just be all lecturing. It has to meet the audience halfway. And this movie starts out as a thriller and becomes more political as it goes along. I think... Again, sorry, I'm gonna keep phrasing it.
So you're allowed to like a thing. That's fine. I also like this thing. Oh, yeah, I just don't think it's what humanity was destined for.
No, but I should say when I say that, I mean these are the kind of really unique products. Like people might overlook it, and like you guys are overlooking it, but I really think like I said, something this mix of comedy, the absurdity of life, and real issues. Just look at Trump, and you can't say that doesn't reflect real life. Like. Reality is absurd and it is very depressing, and those mix in weird ways sometimes. And I think that's what makes these type of movies really powerful to me.
I can't disagree with that.
All right, let's I guess have you stop talking about this fucking movie. Yeah.
So Bulworth, watch it. So thank you guys for indulging us for a non-traditional episode that was originally supposed to be the format of the show. And we needed a break. Hopefully things get less terrible, but I don't really see that happening, so who knows what next episode's gonna be like. But on the meantime, while you're waiting, you should check out the rest of the Flying Machine Network. It's a new month. Oh, also happy 4th of July, everybody. That's when this episode comes out. America. Oh, yeah. So it's a new month, so we have new Patreon episodes out, and Oops was about pardons, and we recorded it right before all the talk about Trump pardoning himself, so it's like a period piece, just like Bulworth. And Divisive Issues was... What was this month's Divisive Issues, Darryl?
It was Superman being buried.
Superman being buried alive. Yes. And so check those out and to do that, you have to be a $5 a month Patreon donor. That's patreon.com/Flying Machine. And check out the other shows on the network. Like I mentioned, Divisive Issues. I'm going to plug our other show this week because we just did a whole month of Stanley episodes. So everyone should check those out. We did
Who's
Stanley
Stanley?
cameos. Yeah, Stanley. His cameos from when writers and artists hated him and put them in their books as villains, or some of his lackluster books and some of the books of his that we like a lot. So check all those out at flyingmachine.network. Oh, and join our Discord and our Facebook group. Links are in the show notes. Thank you all for listening to Oops, I Talk Politics. I've been creating the Monstars and also putting out a hit on myself.
I've been Bulworth.
I've been the magical black character.
And I'm trying to be a spirit, not a ghost.
Oops, I ended the podcast.